Okay, so hey everybody. Today I am welcoming my friend Sabine Mao, and she is here because she is the Bruderhof Mortician. Did I get that right?
Technically you're correct, but I prefer the term funeral director. It's the professional. Licensed funeral director is how we're referred to
In the field?
in the field, yeah.
Well, it sure sounds nicer, so okay, funeral director. Okay, so basically, a couple weeks back I did a video about how death works, well, of course everybody dies, so that didn't really make sense, but I talked about what happens when someone dies at the Bruderhof, and I got a lot of really great questions from you, and if you haven't watched the video, make sure you go back and watch it, because this conversation I'm going to be having with Sabine is going to just kind of be a continuation of that. And so I'm just going to be asking you some questions about what it's like, how you got into the field. But first off, do you mind telling a little about yourself, like your family? Do you have a husband?
Sure.
Yes, you do. No, you do.
Sure, yes. So I guess to back up, I'm actually was first a registered nurse. I did that for about 8 years before I volunteered to become a registered or licensed funeral director, because I saw in our church the need for it. We previously used the services of the funeral directors around our different locations, our communities, because we didn't have a funeral director within our church. But as a nurse, I saw, as people passed on, that it's something we could use, and there had been requests from within our community for someone to train, and no one was willing. So I was getting on. I mean, I was 27 years old and thought maybe I wasn't going to get married, and thought, well, maybe this is something that I could do to serve our church and find fulfillment. And so I offered to do it, not because it's something that I really wanted to do, but I thought it's something that I could do to serve and to help out.
Wow, that's awesome.
I didn't know what I was getting into, that's for sure. But then I moved up to Albany to start the training and met my husband.
Oh,
so there was a blessing in it.
Surprise!
Yes, my future husband. Yes, so we have 4 children. The oldest is 11, and the youngest is going to be 2 next month.
Wow. So how does that work with, I assume, I mean, you can explain how the whole process works, like when you get called or whatever, but how does that work with your kids? Like, do you leave them in the care of somebody else?
Yes.
You get called at night?
Yeah. So of course our church community supports us in this task. We could never do it on our own. We have someone who lives nearby who can listen in for our children. If, as any funeral director knows, if you have to go in the middle of the night when someone dies, then that's what you have to do. And my husband supports me. We work as a team.
That's great.
As most funeral directors do.
Okay.
You work as a team. He's my assistant. We always go together, and so we go day or night and help. I basically do the preparations with the family. To me, that's the most important part, is that the family is included and involved in preparing the body, because that is the first step of the grieving process that sets them on the road for healing in the loss of their loved one, be it a sudden death or death from old age. It doesn't matter. It's still the first step of that grieving. If they're involved hands-on, it's really, really important.
So, Sabine, I'd be very interested to know what your formal training was like, but then what it was like to come back to the Bruderhof, and how you had to sort of adapt your practices or your knowledge for in this setting.
Yeah, so I worked full-time for my what's called a residency, the year after the college training, in a funeral home in Schenectady, in the Albany area. and it was full-time for a year, full-time work. And it was pretty intense. There was, yeah, it was pretty much everything you saw, from violent deaths to, yeah, stillborn babies to, you know, just a lot of hospital. In the Albany area, there's a lot of hospitals.
Right.
There's a lot of hospital deaths and nursing homes. So we would remove the body from the facility or the home or wherever they died, and the family would not be involved with that process of washing the body and the hands-on, in my opinion, healing and in touch with grieving. The next time myself as a resident or the funeral director would see the families is across the conference table to discuss the money and what am I going to pay for this funeral? What can I afford for the funeral? And although that's necessary, and you know, what kind of casket and what kind of vault and what kind of services do you want for your loved one? This is a hard conversation to have with a family when they're grieving. And then this is why it's such a highly regulated industry, is because you have people in a very vulnerable point of their life when they can be taken advantage of.
Yeah. So when you came back to the Bruderhof, how did that change? What did that look like for you?
Well, obviously, nobody here owns
We don't
anything.
have to worry about money.
We don't have money. I'm not.
I've said before many times.
So everything changed. I'm
Yeah.
not sitting across conference tables asking people what they can afford. I'm, you know, coming into their home and asking them how I can support them
That's wonderful.
in washing the body and what they choose to dress them in, which is obviously that's similar to what a funeral director will ask a family out there what they want their loved one dressed in. But then we all do very similar for the casket. It's like a simple pine wooden box. And the family is asked if they want to, they can be involved in making that. Okay, some families have, you know.
I guess some people are craftsmen.
Well, exactly.
Or artists.
Some families have people who are skilled carpenters, and some families don't have any relatives. I mean, we have people who die in our communities who don't have relatives. And then the community is their family. And we all support. And then there's people, brothers and sisters who pass on who have very large families, and everyone wants to help in some way. And there's something that everyone can do. I mean, you have some folks who are carpenters and some folks who are artists, and they'll maybe paint a token.
Like I've seen flowers,
Yeah,
I've seen little writing.
or something on the casket, or
it's beautiful.
just
It really is.
some expression of love and whatever. Every single one is so different and so unique, and it really is so different, each one. You can't even describe, but it comes from their memory and their love for this individual. That
Now, a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, but some people were definitely wondering about green funerals. Are our funerals? I don't know. Are our funerals green? Sorry.
I think our funerals were green before green funerals existed. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, okay, maybe that's overstating it a bit. We've done a sort of a traditional German funeral that goes back centuries.
Okay.
I mean, because of like the roots of our
Right.
church,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Started in Germany in 1920.
Yeah, so it's basically been more of a traditional funeral that we've done because of our heritage.
Okay.
So the green bows that we do with,
Okay.
you know, putting them in the, I think it is the best way to do a funeral so that the soil is aerated, so that the body decomposes and goes back to the earth in a natural way. Now, whether or not you can say we are doing a green funeral, probably not
Yeah.
to the technical,
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
because we don't use just a cotton shroud. We probably have nails in the coffin.
Right,
I mean, a
right.
true green funeral is
Would
very
be everything is
stringent.
decomposable.
Yeah, and it's like done in a cemetery that I think you lay the body in the earth, and there's no markers, and
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
it has very stringent
Okay.
regulations whether or not it's truly a green.
Okay, so Sabine, I promised my viewers, like I said before, that I would ask you some of their questions. So here goes. Okay, so the first one is, one question I have in regards to the burials is the health laws regarding both the casket and grave. Is your community exempt to these regulations?
Health laws. Okay. We are definitely not exempt from any regulations.
Okay.
But I think people would be surprised what they could actually do in their own homes. There's a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions about the health laws that exist for the good of people in regards to the funeral industry. And many people look ahead, especially if their loved one is dying, and they talk to a funeral director ahead of time and say
Yeah.
that these are my wishes, and
Okay.
is there a way that you can accommodate my wishes to do the wake at home? And I know many funeral directors who have respected that.
Okay, wow. So the next question I have for you, Sabine, is, thanks for this beautiful video. I guess the other video, this one's also very beautiful. As you spoke about death in the Bruderhof, I was wondering if members can become organ donors if they want to. Why or why not? I've actually wondered this myself, so I'd be very
Wow.
interested to know.
That's an enormous topic.
Yeah.
You could make 3 videos on that topic.
Yeah.
It encompasses quite a few different issues, I would say. Apart from the whole aspect of the body organs being used in the medical industry, there's the whole topic of the ethical questions of how
Yeah.
long you want to extend life, and the issues of what people actually know about what's going on. They don't understand what it means to become an organ donor.
Okay.
And of course, I have full respect for people who want to donate their bodies to others. I mean, it's just
It's pretty amazing.
it's amazing. It's a sacrificial thing to donate your body to
Yeah.
science. But from what I've seen on the end of being a funeral director and seeing the bodies come in after organ donation, it's traumatic for those left behind. As a family trying to
Yeah.
grieve, they're not just taking essential organs. It's not just people who want, a heart donation or a kidney, which are the common things you hear about.
Yeah, that's what I would imagine.
Yeah, there's long bones, there's, eyes, there's skin, and you're not left with much to work with, and often people don't understand that when they say that they want to donate and be an organ donor, and the family doesn't either understand that, and it can it can cause a lot of trauma, if you will, after a funeral or after a death during a funeral because of misunderstandings.
Okay.
So I just think that people need to understand what they're going into.
Okay, be educated.
Yeah, be educated before they would make that kind of a decision.
So Sabine, next question is, how does your community view or feel about cremation as a choice after death? Is this an ongoing discussion? Oh, this is an ongoing discussion for my extended family. Some are for it and some are against it. What are your thoughts?
So cremation, it's historically something that's been used in other parts of the world. I know in India it's been used for centuries as that's what they've done as a way of burying their dead. It's not a foreign possibility that we would, use it if we needed to use it. It's for us within our setting. I don't see why we would need to use it. It's not that we wouldn't or have a rule against using it or need to consider using it, as a choice. Just within our communities, we have such a beautiful opportunity to do it the way we do.
Yeah.
It almost doesn't make sense to choose it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
A lot of people are driven to that choice of cremation as a cost, as a cost measure, because funerals have become so expensive that cremation is often used as a choice because of the cost. We, on the other hand, would probably be doing more damage to the environment by using cremation. I mean, it would be leaving more of a carbon footprint, I think. For us, we'd be taking the body away from our communities to a crematory. So you're driving it there, and then you're using fossil fuels to cremate the body, and then you're having to drive the cremains back and find a way to inter the cremains. So for us, because the body is interred right here on our property and it's waked right in the home and it's walked by the family to the place of interment, it's about as natural and a homecoming as you. It's exactly. There's no hearse. There's no reason to even kind of contemplate that. Now, if we needed to, I'm not saying people would be opposed to it. If someone died across the ocean from where their spouse was buried, and they had wanted to be buried where their loved one was, and that is the most common sense option of it.
I don't think anyone would be opposed to it.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't say anyone would have a moral opposition to it, I don't think, but I guess it's just never been done. I don't know.
Okay. History still to be written, I guess.
Yes.
So, Sabine, my next question is to you. Just curious, is there an embalming process? How does the body get prepared, or is it considered an immediate burial?
So it would probably be considered an immediate burial, although not in the sense of how the Jews and the Muslims do an immediate burial, which is usually within like 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they don't have a wake as we do. But not immediate in that sense, but not a burial in the sense of how a funeral home would try and prepare the body to last for, the reason embalmings were instituted typically were to extend the period that the body would last to allow for a family to gather. Families have become so globally spread out. So to give them time to come together when someone dies, it just helps the body to be preserved for a week, give that much longer time for them to make plans. So for us, our communities tend to be a little bit more gathered in that sense.
Yeah, and I guess usually a wake for us is like what, 2 or 3
2 or 3 days, yeah. And we do use dry ice. Obviously, it's not going to extend that time quite like an embalming would, but we don't do embalming. We wash the body very well. This is also comes from our Christian beliefs. Jesus's body was washed. It was prepared, and it was anointed. And I believe that is also just a last service of love that we can do for each brother and sister. And again, it's the family that's involved with this last caring and preparing of the body.
Yeah.
So it also comes from our Christian values of this last service of love and of washing and dressing, but it also has some scientific value in that it's removing any bacterial load from the body that staves off infection that's going to start. Now it's minimal compared to what an embalming would do, but it is something.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Oh my.
Have you experienced, had any personal experiences with death or a funeral within our community?
Personally, well, as my viewers know, my parents lost their first child. So my oldest brother Stephen died when he was a baby. That happened in the hospital. My parents have often referred to how hard it was for him to be in the hospital morgue and coming home by himself in a hearse. I remember, like, as a child, it was a difficult memory for me. Like, my mom didn't have her baby for a whole day. But then within my memory is the passing of my grandfather when I was a junior in high school, Carol King. I had actually just been taking forensics, so I actually found it really difficult because I just learned like how, about rigor mortis and all this stuff, and I was really shocked by it because I was just a teenager and it was my first kind of, and then suddenly my grandfather died. I mean, it wasn't that sudden. He was older, and anyway, I don't know. Do you remember him at all?
Yes, actually, my husband and I lived next to him.
Really?
We had just moved.
At that time?
Yes, we actually were asked to move next to him to help care for him.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, in the Fox Hill community.
I
Yep.
did not know that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So we actually have a personal connection there.
Wow. So are there any like stories that are have been meaningful to you in your work as a funeral director? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, certainly every story is meaningful. Every situation that I step into is special and unique, and you have to be so sensitive coming into each family. You never know what you'll find, and you have to be open and willing to listen and find what each family, listen to each family to hear what they find important. But of course, for me, maybe I should tell you what I personally found the most difficult, or maybe not difficult, but what opened my eyes to what each family experiences.
If you don't mind, I'd love to hear.
It was my own mother passed away in 2017, and it was somewhat unexpected in that she developed a very sudden onset or quick form of ALS,
Oh, wow.
where she was diagnosed in November and died the next June.
Wow.
So she was only 63 years old, so it was very, very fast. And unfortunately, she lived in England, so it was also challenging in that we didn't see her much. So I was fortunate that the church, our church community, sent us over there twice, though. And what was so special to me was being able to be there right at the time that she died and being able to prepare her body. And so I know how important that process for the family is of washing the body and preparing it, because I go back to that time many times and draw strength from that. There's many times that I wish I could have been there while she was suffering and when she was dying, but the fact that I had those few hours of preparing her body for burial mean everything to me.
Yeah. So Sabine, thank you so much for sharing today. It was very meaningful, and thanks for the work that you do, and all the best with that too.
Thank you.
And for my viewers, we'll see you next time, and say thank you to Sabine in the comments.